like to call the December 8th meeting of the Carson Area Metropolitan Planning Organization to order. Can I get roll call, please?
Chair Stedfield.
Here.
Vice Chair Bagwell. Here. Member Schutte.
Here.
Member McQuarrie. Here. Member Dodson. Here. Member Nosad. Member Henderson.
I'm here online.
Oh, okay. Ex officio member Rosenberg.
Here.
A quorum's present.
Thank you. At this time, I'll take the first session of public comment. Do we have any public comment? Do we have anything on the phone? Anybody on the phone?
There are no callers on the line at this time.
Okay. Then on to item number 4, for possible action, approval of the minutes of the October 13th, 2021 CAMPO meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I move to approve the minutes of October 13th, 2021 as presented.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I second.
Thank you. All those in favor of approving the minutes from October 13, 2021 meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
All right. Passes. All right. Now we're on to item 5A for discussion only. Presentation and discussion on the Nevada Department of Transportation Federal Fiscal Year 2022 to 2025 Statewide Transportation Improvement Program and One Nevada process. So, Chris, I guess you're going to start this off?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So with us tonight is Kevin Berry from the Nevada Department of Transportation. He will be taking us through a presentation and that's probably a period for questions, Kevin, at the end. So I'm going to turn it over to Kevin and we'll run from there. Thanks.
Thank you. Just for clarification, do you want me to keep my mask on while I give the presentation?
It's up to you. It's up to you. You're more than 6. Oh, no. Sorry.
Good evening. My name's Kevin Berry. I'm an assistant chief for the department here. I work for the program development multimodal section. To begin with, I just wanted to give you a little background. In June, we started a process to amend our statewide transportation improvement program and annual work program. We typically will either amend or adopt a new statewide transportation improvement program, also known as the STIP, or our annual work program. This began in June. By September, we had approvals or acceptance by both our transportation board and FHWA. Today, I'm going to cover some of the current projects that are planned in both the STIP and work program, as well as some of the planning functions that we're doing throughout the CAMPO area. Also, I want to talk a lot more so about the process that we're deploying to help us arrive at a more proactive STIP and work program, and that's the One Nevada process. So to begin with, there's about 25 million, a little under 25 million that we have planned for capital investment within the CAMPO boundary. Just to clarify a few things, the I-580 from College to Mount Rose, that's an ITS project. Just, it's not very clear on there. And then also that next project, which is the Mount Rose to Geiger, that is all the way down to the US 50 side that does fall in your boundary. We didn't divide out the costs, it was just a project total. Some of the planning activities, as you guys are maybe aware of, include the US 50 operational study that was completed in May of 21, I believe. We're currently moving that process through some of the disciplines at the department to understand how some of those concepts can start being realized into projects. That's a immediate, mid, and long-term process. The other projects or needs that are being addressed are also the I-580 US 50 intersection. That's an important project. It's identified in your RTP. That will start being evaluated this year to see how it prioritizes against the rest of the needs of the state. That's part of what I'll be presenting with the One Nevada process and how that looks and sort of that formalized situation that NDOT's trying to get put in place. And then also in 2023, federal fiscal year 2023 or 24, we plan to do an update to the existing 395 South Corridor study that was done about 10 years ago. Oh, shoot. One of these buttons. So it's important to start from the beginning a little bit with the One Nevada process. In 2018, the department adopted the One Nevada plan. That's our long-range plan. The plan provides a foundation by establishing a number of goal areas, and it also sets some framework for us to start formalizing our prioritization process. The graphic here really demonstrates visually what that looks like in terms of looking at needs, understanding those needs, validating those needs, developing concept projects, refining those concept projects, looking at those, prioritizing them, and then ultimately allowing those projects to get the right resource directed towards them so they can ultimately get better defined and then ultimately land in either our STIP or annual work program. Now I'm going to go through, as you can see through the graphic, there's almost like a long-range, mid-range, and short-range solution for what we're trying to do with the One Nevada process and plan. So the first step is really how do you identify needs? We're taking a two-pronged approach with how we're identifying needs. Needs come in either through a stakeholder situation or a data-driven process. We're still working on how we're going to start validating stakeholder-driven needs, but we have developed a needs database tool that really allows us to look at our network and understand where there are gaps, per se. Really, the idea is to start taking those needs, validating them, and then advancing them. One example that I have here isn't within the CAMPO boundary, but it's a really good example of what that needs analysis tool does for us. As you can see, this is a blue diamond example, which is in southern Nevada, but what's important to see is that we're using the goals as outlined in the One Nevada. We've developed some criteria that we were able to geospatially reference on maps to understand where we have hotspots or gaps. And what this allows us to do is really take that data-driven approach and say, okay, here's where we should focus some attention on. What's that attention look like? We're still, formulating that, but for something like this would drive us to fund a corridor study to better understand how 160, 159 are functioning. So the next step in the overall process is that mid-range effort. And this is where NDOT, MPO partners, other jurisdictional partners are going to be really critical. This is where we start understanding, we understand there's needs. That's okay. That's perfect. We understand those have validated. And this step really takes us into looking at the needs and some of the solutions and concepts that will help change that need and provide that solution. This step will incorporate, as you can see, those long-range needs that are identified, RTPs, some of our divisional plans, as well as corridor studies. This is basically in process right now. The idea is that I believe in January, we're kicking off meetings with all the MPOs to start really having that one-on-one to develop some dialogue between how MPOs are identifying needs, how they're identifying those concept projects, and just align better with what MPOs are doing as well as what NDOT's doing. So now we arrive at the STIP and work program. We've actually prioritized the STIP and work program twice now. Each time we refine it a little more. As you recall, we have the One Nevada plan that outlined the goal areas that we were looking at. What we've done here is developed criteria to start measuring how those projects might affect our goal areas. Really, the idea was to look at available data that could be, again, geospatially referenced on a map. We also wanted very reliable data so we could repeat the process, and then also make sure that that criteria and the data really corresponded well with that goal area. So we did run that prioritization for this last amendment. Some of the other things that we have to do, because we can't let computers tell us everything, right? So the next step is really taking what was prioritized and harmonizing. And there are a number of things that have to be considered. Funding eligibility is very important. Readiness has been huge for us lately. We want to be able to deliver that STIP and work program as approved, and that's getting more critical as more needs are identified. We also want to make sure we're hitting some performance measures. We want to start incorporating that idea that this is it's a data-driven process. The reason why we're doing that is because we want to have our performance measured through what projects we're delivering. And then, of course, the geographical distribution is important. So, like I mentioned earlier, January, which is right around the corner, is when we're going to start really engaging with the MPOs. We have a number of workshops planned that will start connecting what that One Nevada process looks like, what that One Nevada plan looks like with RTPs. It's our hope that we can start taking some of the needs that are identified on our facilities and really evaluating them as a collective state, bring those in, have some dialogue with the MPOs, and really start advancing some of the projects or the needs into projects. And with that, I think I am done.
Thank you for the presentation. Are there any questions?
I do.
Mayor, please.
So thank you so much for the presentation. Can you talk to me about how often do you see the process for amendment? So one of my concerns for all that we do here too, right, is that I'm working so hard to put plans together, and we're looking at 2050, and we're trying to put things together. So my concern becomes is how often do we have an opportunity to amend because new factors come to light and things happen, and yet how much are these baked? And everybody goes, well, no, I can't work on that project now because it's not in the program till 2031. So what can we do to look at it and use a great planning document, but also recognize that it needs occasionally to be changeable? So can you talk to me about that?
Yeah, sure. So we want to run prioritization once we get it less clunky, so to speak, twice a year. And we also want to be evaluating those needs that are coming in on an annual basis. So if we're updating our data-driven needs assessment tool, we want to do that annually. We also we have an outreach effort to all the rural counties, and part of that consultation process includes understanding their concerns. And so we're really good at understanding the concern, but we want to validate that and advance it. So that'll be an annual situation. So we're hopeful that we're not getting rid of needs. once they're validated, we're going to run prioritization and pull that data back towards those needs because conditions change, right? So we want to make sure we're always aware that that's a need. Maybe we can't fund it right now because of the statewide needs elsewhere are a little bit greater, but it doesn't mean that the data is not going to change that the next year. So we're not going to lose that. So it is very dynamic in the sense that we're going to be looking at it in a perfect world twice a year.
And if I may, Mr. Chairman. So I guess what I'm trying to get after is what's my planning horizon for you? So are you guys setting projects for 2 years from now, 3 years from now? So really to effectuate change, I'm out 3 years. I'm guessing in my mind that that's probably close to where you're at, because by the time you're contracting and setting up projects and scoping them and all that kind of stuff. So I'm just trying to get a feel that really the priority could change for a project that's on a 3-year list or a 5-year list. Am I on the right track here? Because I'm not going to affect a change on what you're doing over the next 2 years unless I get a big input of money, right? Something to help change that. And then you would pull more projects in if you had dollars to, well, and capacity of staff to be able to accomplish it.
Yeah, and that's kind of that is the goal of the process, is to proactively prepare and assign those resources to projects a little bit further down the line. So we operate in a, every other year we're changing or amending or adopting a STIP or annual work program, right? So that's great, but the idea would be that to really move the needle on some of like safety or preservation, you really have to be outside of that 4-year document. So you're preparing the right projects because it takes time. 2 years, sometimes 3 years. It depends on the complexity and maturity of that project. But the idea is that this will allow us to be a little more agile, but also have a really strong, 2-year plan that doesn't vary a lot, because that'll really help not only in terms of we're not changing your tips too much, we're getting good prices for contracting because people can rely on that document and see that, okay, their prices are pretty good. Also, it helps us understand the extent of the project as well, because sometimes we have something that's, for instance, just a rehab project, but then we start adding, and then the costs start increasing. Those added needs are great. They're really, there's a purpose for them. It'd just be a lot nicer to have that
Scoped
understood
in the first place.
a little sooner.
And then can I ask on your chart, where you go through the categories that you're using for analysis purposes? So like enhance safety, preserve infrastructure, are those equally weighted, or does enhance safety, does that have more weight? Because I can't see your weighting system here, but it is weighted to help, because I guess what I worry about, that you don't just use road miles or vehicle traffic, so that if you've got a lot of any crash area that, we're losing 20 crashes and a death there all the time, does that priority move in then, so that's a highly weighted section?
Yeah, so each of the goal areas are, right now, I think we're pretty even across enhance safety, preserve infrastructure, optimize mobility, transform economies, foster sustainability, as well as connecting communities. And then if they're all equal, then like each of the criteria that we're using, also just because preserve infrastructure has 3 and enhance safety has 1, that doesn't change. We've kind of apple to apple it, so to speak, in the prioritization spreadsheet. So that 1.1, which is crash reduction potential, that criteria, if it's 17% and preserve infrastructure is 17%, those are balanced in terms of all of 17% is going towards that crash reduction potential, And then that 17% would then be divided between 2.1, 2.2, 2.3 for other asset improvements, bridge condition improvement, as well as pavement condition improvement. So we've addressed that. So I get your concern in terms of how do you make sure that you're not overemphasizing an area just because maybe the data's better or it's only got one criteria. We've really done a lot of work. It's a tool called MODA, and it stands for Multi-Objective Decision Analysis. And so it sits in Excel, but we built it so that we're balancing not only that criteria in terms of goals are balanced, and we can switch those. If leadership changes and they really want to move towards preserve infrastructure and take away some of the other things, we're able to shift that. We've also done a pretty decent job of trying to balance rural versus urban in terms of some of the thresholds that would trigger some of the, especially within that needs assessment tool. We've changed the triggers in terms of what would actually make it red, so to speak.
Okay, I really appreciate it because it's, again, I look at those same issues for us as a team is to what criteria should we or are we using to make those same decisions for us? And so my question really becomes, I'm not saying right or wrong because I don't really know the answer, but should one of these actually be weighted higher? So, like I said, does death on an intersection that continues to happen, I would assume that this group would move that project because loss of life to me has got to be more than preservation of the pavement. I mean, I want that too. I want all of this stuff because you actually have great categories here.
If I may,
But,
I think
yeah.
that's where it comes out of the digital realm and into the human realm to make those decisions based on some of those ideas.
That the criteria, the computer gave me one
Correct.
answer, but I'm going to use something else to.
Yeah, that's that harmonization piece where do you want to jump in?
Yeah, can I clarify a little bit? They're not, all those categories are actually not weighted equally.
Oh.
They're close, they're not too far off, but safety is
Higher.
weighted the highest. So safety's out of 100, and I know, Kevin, you didn't have this in front of you, I was able to look it up. Out of 100%, so enhanced safety is 22%, preserve infrastructure is 20%,
Okay.
optimize mobility is 17, transform economies is 12, foster sustainability is 17, and connect communities is 12. So
That
clearly,
makes more sense. Thank you.
safety is our top priority. I think what Kevin was getting at is underneath those categories, those subcategories
Are equal.
are not all add up to the big slice, if you will.
Got it.
I also wanted to add that, and you noted this, Mayor Bagwell, as well, that and so did Kevin, it's a coordinated effort between the MPO and the state. So in order for us to prioritize, it also has to be your priority, and you also have a data-driven process. And so, we'll work together, and if you're seeing needs that are not currently funded, let's talk about them. Let's see how they score. Our process isn't perfect. We're using the data we have, but sometimes we're missing something. So we definitely want to have that conversation and that coordination because we actually can't put something in our STIP and fund it unless it's in the
In
MPO's
ours.
TIP. So it is really a coordinated up, and you can't spend our money. So
Right.
it's truly a coordinated effort in terms of those priorities.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate because I think there's some opportunities for us as a board to look at priority methodologies and data-driven decisions to help us prioritize projects. So we may have, I think it's in both worlds to try and work on this. So thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Please.
Thank you for the presentation. A quick question on the statewide needs analysis, objective and outcomes. On the outcomes and the comparison of needs to community recommendation, which is just wonderful to see, what would be an example of like a community recommendation?
So within that needs analysis, community recommendation would be, let's see, let me make it real. Okay, So you have heavy head traffic on, call it Carson at Fit or something.
Okay.
You'd like to have us look at that to help you with some sort of solution, whether it be flashers, lighting, whatever that is. That would be you saying, hey, we have a concern here that heads are not getting seen by cars.
Okay.
And you bring that to us, and then we help you guys understand what that need is, and then you take that back to the rest of the department, the other disciplines, and say, okay, what's our solution here? What do you guys see? Our scoping teams, our design teams, and then we start trying to arrive at something that then would be put into that mid-range effort to say, okay, here's a need, here's some of the data that we were able to grab, here's what area cost that we think is going to cost, and then that would kind of stack up against the rest of the needs that we're taking in. And then that's how we start saying, okay, of the 200 situational needs that we've received this year, that's just a number.
Sure.
We think we should advance 50, and this is why, because they're hitting a priority, they're going to get the most bang for their buck, and then we, as a department, would then assign designers, scoping, other consultant services to help get those more refined, and then ready to be ultimately added to our STIP and or your TIP.
That's wonderful. So it truly is community.
Well, part of that is, but that's the kicker, because we want to make sure we're coming with understanding the need, not just the solution.
Right.
That's one thing that we're really trying to push is that tell us what the problem is so that we can arrive, not that I need a signal, not that I need ABC. Give us what the problem is, and then we can start evaluating that for an effective solution at the department.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Any other questions for Kevin?
Mr. Dodson.
Kevin, thanks for the presentation. I was interested in that US 50 operational analysis east of Dayton. Just wondering, you indicated that the department is currently looking at evaluating alternatives there. My question would be, does CAMPO have any review, because we're a partner agency in that study, before you reach any conclusions? Is that part of what you might do when you come back to us with collaboration in mind?
Yeah. So that study has concluded. So that thing is pretty well buttoned up. And that was the idea of that. So if we can go back to that graphic, that was the need, right? So we said, here's a need. Let's start with that. And then some of those concepts, that's what we're working on now. And of course, it would have to go through CAMPO because that portion of 50 sits in the boundary. So it ultimately go through the CAMPO tip. And so you guys would have views of that. We're hopeful that by June, we've got some pretty well-defined concepts that we can start evaluating to begin that work on. And part of it is so that once we do get some other primary projects, which are pavement projects in that area, we can understand what of those elements identified in the operational can be added to that when we ultimately go to deliver without delay. That's another thing. We want to make sure I feel like sometimes I talk in circles, but the idea is to really understand the full extent of the need so that we can better align with the timing. Because if you add too much, then it's what you thought you could deliver in 2 years is going to take 4 because of right of way or utilities or whatever else could potentially push that. So that's the purpose of that mid-range, is really have that proactive approach. So yes, you guys will definitely see that because it'll ultimately have to get into your tip and potentially their RTP, right? Sure.
All right. Any other questions for Kevin?
can I add something, Chair?
No.
Just to,
Oh,
Go.
Commissioner Stedfield.
Mr. Chair,
Yes. Yes?
yeah, I just want to make a comment on this since we brought up, US 50. And I know NDOT's well aware of this, but some of the areas of US 50 that are within CAMPO, we have had just a spate of fatal accidents lately. I understand the need to study and program, but we need to do something regarding safety on US 50 sooner rather than later.
Agree. We met, we were out there, last week at the Citizen Advisory Board.
I was there, yeah.
Yep. We discussed the operational study and some of those next steps. I know that immediate solutions need to happen, and I believe that we are getting message signs, portable message signs out there. I know that didn't happen as fast as you would like. We were dealing with a lot of fires prior, so I think that that's something to start, but I don't disagree that we need to work on some solutions sooner than later, and we are still working on that.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right. Anybody else?
I just wanted to note, Chair Stedfield and for the board, and I wanted to build on what Kevin said earlier because I think it was a good point as identifying that need. That's one of the reasons we do a lot of our modal studies, such as Safe Routes to School Master Plan or our current Carson Area System Transportation Master Plan is to help build and get that community support in terms of identifying those needs so that we can, as CAMPO, help inform our partner agencies, whether that's Carson City, Lyon County, or Douglas County, in identifying those projects and prioritizing those projects, working with NDOT. So I just kind of wanted to tie that together as we do corridor studies and feasibility studies and master plan things. They all kind of correlate together and eventually result in those projects then where we can pull from those components. So I just wanted to provide that contextual background to kind of build on what Kevin was saying.
All right. Kevin, thank you. Appreciate it. All right, moving on to item 5B. Discussion of possible action regarding amending the CAMPO policies and procedures, policies on procurement. And Alex, this is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Alex Cruz, Transit Coordinator. So CAMPO's current policies and procedures document, which guides CAMPO in regards to staffing and procurement, has been in place since December of 2007. Staff is proposing an amendment to the policies and procedures. The changes were included as late material for item 5B and consist of a review for a variety of typos, clarification on FHWA consultant procedures, and expanded FTA procurement procedures. The FTA procurement procedures have been developed with help from the FTA following some deficiencies that were discovered during the recent triennial review that will be discussed in further at CAMPO Agenda Item 5C. With that, I'm willing to take any questions regarding to the policies and procedures document.
Any questions for Alex?
Yes,
please.
thank you, Mr. Chair. I noticed in the feds require competitive bidding for most stuff, right? Nevada revised statutes prohibit bidding for professional engineering services. So I was just wondering, and I realize much of this is going to be acquisition of buses and equipment and stuff like that. So I don't know how much engineering is going to come into, what's covered with this document, but I was just wondering how you resolve that difference.
If it's an FTA project, we have to follow the FTA's regulations. So essentially, whatever the FTA tells us, we kind of try to break down and follow in that document. So we have those levels of, if it's a micro purchase, a simplified acquisition, or full-on procurement through like request for proposal, request for bid, that kind of stuff. So we would try to follow the FTA policy first and foremost, and then make sure that we're covering those regulations first before kind of looking at making sure that Nevada or Carson City's policies are followed.
And they do have the money, after all.
They have the string.
I did have another question. So it seems like there's more evaluation, including an independent cost evaluation or an ICE. Is that something staff can do in-house at Carson City, or do you have to hire a consultant to review all the bids?
No, it's something we do in-house. It really depends on the cost of whatever we're procuring. But it could be something as simple as looking into a variety of vendors and saying, okay, well, this bus costs this much, this bus over here costs this much, and they're similar, they're apples to apples or something like that. So those analyses can be done in-house. They can be simple. They can be a lot more in-depth if it's going to be a bigger project. But we can, for the most part, handle them.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I guess I will call for the motion.
I move to approve CAMPO's policies and procedures as amended based on the late material received.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? All right, passes. All right, item 5C for discussion only. Presentation and discussion on the final report for the fiscal year 2021 Federal
Aye.
Transit.
That was a delayed action.
What was that?
That was Wes saying aye
Oh,
on the agenda item.
thanks, Wes. Anyway, let me start that again. Presentation and discussion on the final report for the fiscal year 2021 Federal Transit Administration Triennial Review of the Carson Area Metropolitan Planning Organization. Alex, this is you also.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. CAMPO is subject to a triennial review by the FTA for 2021. CAMPO last underwent a triennial review in fiscal year 2018. The 2018 review found CAMPO deficient in the section regarding the disadvantaged business enterprise with some unreported transit vehicle purchases on DBE uniform reports. The 2021 triennial review included 21 areas of compliance and found no repeat issues, but CAMPO was found to have some deficiencies in the area of procurement. Staff has been working on abating the deficiencies exemplified by the CAMPO policies and procedures previously approved on item 5B, and the deficiencies include deficiency P1-3, which is procurement policies and procedures not current or complete. This has been addressed through the Appendix B of the CAMPO policies and procedures. The document includes all missing FTA procurement regulations that CAMPO was found deficient in. Deficiency P4-1 is a responsibility determination deficiencies. This was addressed by page 20 of the policies, packet page 70. Deficiency P4-2, no verification that excluded parties are not participating. This was addressed by item 18 on page 15 of the policies and procedures, packet page 65. Deficiency P5-1 is incomplete written documentation of procurement history. This was addressed by page 15 of the policies, packet page 65. And deficiency P8-5, lacking required justifications and documentation for sole source awards. This was addressed by page 19 of the policies, packet page 69. And the final one, deficiency P11-1, missing FTA clauses. This was addressed by the table on page 28 of the policies, packet page 78, and also page 30 of the policies, packet page 80. CAMPO staff will be trained on the previously amended policies and procedures, and CAMPO will then submit those policies and staff training logs to the FTA to show that all deficiencies have been abated.
All right, thank you, Alex. Any questions for Alex? Of course. Here you go.
Just one question. While the training and the policy manual will meet the criteria for abatement of deficiency, on the one, which was contract 5, the software purchase for the sole source issue, I thought it indicated that you're going to have to talk to them about how do you cure something that you didn't bid? Did they already give us the pass and say that training and documentation would clear that?
Yeah, so
So we don't have to pay back or?
Yeah, their clarification was basically if the contract is still ongoing, then we need to go back and just kind of make sure that any clauses that were missing are included. For the sole source, it wasn't a matter of missing clauses, it was just we didn't do the proper procedure for a sole source. I think it was assumed that because it was a software, we can do sole source, which is not quite correct. So they said that basically, since our contract is kind of close to the end, we're essentially all right as long as we make sure that that sole source policy is in place and that we know exactly what we're supposed to do the next time around, that we're not allowed to just use software as sole source.
So they're giving us a pass on number 5? We violated, but we're getting a pass because we did the training and update the policy?
Yeah, more or
I
less.
just want to make sure there isn't, thank you, that's what I'm after, is that we don't owe them $82,666 back.
No. For the most
Okay.
part, the FTA
Thank
is okay with us showing that we've amended all our policies and they want us to kind of continue forward correctly.
All right, thank you.
Any
If I
other
could-
questions for Alex?
I was going to jump in, Mr. Chair. Apologize. I just wanted to build on one thing Alex said, was that, I think during the whole triennial process and following that, staff, particularly Alex, had really worked with the FTA's consultant and the FTA itself on working through these solutions. So I think we've come to a good agreement and consensus, and I just wanted to appreciate Alex's work and how that coordination has worked with the FTA. I think there's very little risk here of continued issues on these particular items. So that was it. Thank you.
We heard that here. Our triennial, next time I'll have 0 deficiencies. I heard it. Thank you guys for a good job.
All right, thanks a lot. So moving on to item 5D, for possible action, discussion, and possible action regarding recertification of the Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan and Federal Fiscal Year 2022 Safety Performance Targets for the Jump Around Carson Transit System. Alex, once again.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As a recipient of 5307 grant apportionment funds, CAMPO must have a Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan in place, which is reviewed and certified yearly by CAMPO. At the December 2020 meeting, CAMPO reviewed and certified our first PTASP. The 2021 PTASP is similar, with just updated safety goals and language changes. Staff proposed maintaining most of the load targets from the previous iteration of the PTASP, reducing the fixed route safety event target from 3 down to 2, and reducing the fixed route injuries and per vehicle mile revenue from 2 safety events per 100,000 vehicle revenue miles to 1 safety event per 100,000 vehicle revenue miles. A change in the definition of event is also just to match the National Transit Database Reduced Reporter Policy Manual, which is where we report any safety events, CAMPO. So that, any available to answer any questions as regards to the PTASP.
Anybody have any questions? Please.
Alex, I was a little confused. Was there 1 year of measuring these safety goals in 2021, or has that not yet taken place? Seems like there's a little conflicting language in there about that.
Yeah, so we've had, since the PTASP was certified in December of 2020, we've had about a full year. And as far as the PTASP goes, we didn't have any safety events, any safety accidents or injuries according to the National Transit Database.
Any other questions? Chris, you have anything to add? Just thought I'd check.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're
Thank you
welcome.
for checking.
All right, with that, I will ask for a motion.
I'll make a motion. I move to approve certification of the Public Transit Agency Safety Plan, including the the fiscal year 2022 safety performance targets for the JAC transit system from page 5 of the plan as presented.
Thank you, Jez. We have a motion. Do we have a second? All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Those opposed? Motion passes. All right, now for item 5E. For discussion only, presentation and discussion on the 2021 Transportation Network Monitoring Report. Marquise, it's all yours.
Cool. Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have some slides that we're going to load up in just a second.
And just so you guys, we have that revised
Late material?
late stuff.
All right, so Marquise Williams, Transportation Planner for the record. Kelly and I are going to walk you through the CAMPO's 2021 Network Monitoring Report. This is the third iteration of the monitoring report. We had our first one in 2019, and it's where we monitor and consolidate our data for demographics, traffic, bikes, pedestrians, transit, and pavement. Anything really that touches our transportation network. So staff collects, analyzes, and acts on data on a day-to-day basis, but this is really a place to consolidate that and provide an annual snapshot of the Carson area. The next few slides include demographic data and trends from the American Community Survey, excuse me. This is an annual survey conducted by the Census Bureau by sampling random addresses throughout the country. It's a bit different than every 10-year census data, and that 2020 census data wasn't available for inclusion in this report, but it will be used in the 2022 monitoring report. So this first slide shows that the population of the CAMPO area has shrunk since 2010, from 85,000 in 2010 down to 84.5 in 2019. Well, in this figure, you can see that the number of workers in the area has increased. That's the blue line at the top of the chart. The number of folks commuting via transit has remained relatively stagnant, while the percentage of people choosing to walk to work has actually dropped by a percentage. I'll discuss that a bit more in a few slides, but the important takeaway here is that driving has stayed relatively consistent in that low 80% range, while the total volume has increased.
I would really love to see how that chart would look with 2020 on it.
Yeah, so yeah, next, give us a year. So the, excuse me. So this increase in people driving to work obviously has an impact on our commute times. One key explanation for this trend is that while people are commuting from longer distances and the number of households is shrinking in the Carson area, and people are choosing to live further from work. So as we plan our transportation systems for the future, it's important to understand these commuting patterns and ensure that our network can sustain them. So figure 2.6 shows that the new households in the Carson area are affluent. The percentage of households earning less than $25,000 a year has decreased by 3 percentage points since 2010 to the lowest level it's ever been, while the percentage earning over $150,000 has increased by 3 percentage points during that same period to the highest level it's ever been. This shift in income levels can be explained a bit by unit occupancy status. This slide is mislabeled, but it's unit occupancy status, where you can see that while the number of housing units in the CAMPO area has increased, that's that green line through the middle, demand is increasing with it. The percentage of vacant or available units is now at 5.9%, which is the lowest it's been throughout the reporting period. The impacts of this reduced availability leads to housing affordability issues. As transportation planners and designers and builders, we can continue to invest in equitable multimodal infrastructure as we've done through our Complete Streets investments in downtown and South Carson Street. This will ensure that our region is not only accessible to residents of all income levels, but it'll also alleviate the pressure caused by the increased demand on our roadways. In fact, multi-mobility is the subject of the next two slides. Here in figure 4.22, we see the average pedestrian volumes on each of the 4 corridors identified for complete streets treatments. Though counts have been taken on each of the 4 corridors, strategies and count locations have varied, which has affected the reliability of this data. Staff has purchased and is in the process of installing new permanent counters to make sure data is standardized and thereby more useful going forward. One more note on this. Specifically for the upcoming William Street project and the North Carson Street project in the future, we will collect high-quality before data and after data to clearly monitor the impacts of our infrastructure investment. So figure 4.24 shows Jack fixed route and paratransit ridership over the past 8 years. In recent years, you do see a decline in ridership, both in 2019 and then again in 2020. The reduction in 2019 was due to a change in contractor, and then in 2020, it was a result of the pandemic. So as we continue on a return to normal, and as Jack invests in new technology to enhance rider experiences, we fully expect ridership to return to its previous highs and hopefully go even higher. With that, I'll turn it over to Kelly.
Thank you, Marquise. Kelly Norman, Transportation Planner Analyst, for the record. CAMPO's travel demand model was updated in 2020 along with the 2050 Regional Transportation Plan. CAMPO is divided into Transportation Analysis Zones, or TAZs, for the travel demand model to calculate traffic-related census, decennial census, and American Community Survey data. These next 2 series of maps show housing and commercial employment where they're likely to grow within the next 30 years. So in this is this first series of housing unit growth throughout the CAMPO area. We see Mound House and Dayton in Lyon County growing. And within Carson City, we see Western Nevada College and just east of 580 along the US 50 corridor. And in Douglas County, south of 580, east of 395, we see this growth near the Schultz Ranch area. In this second series, you'll see the highest employment is located within Carson City. But job growth north of US 50 in Dayton and along Johnson Lane in Douglas County is seen in the model as well. These next few maps come from our travel demand model as well. The green denotes vehicles that would be traveling at or above speed limit, nice and easy, and they would be level of service A, B, or C. If it's red, orange, yellow, the level of service decreases, and as you go more and more towards the red, you have more stop and go traffic. That's what that represents. So in this already in this base year, we see that US 395, a portion of US 395 South is already failing it's in its level of service. And I think Kevin noted both US 395 South and US 50 as potential projects for NDOT as well. And this will be something that CAMPO will be working with NDOT to manage. And by 2050, failing conditions we see throughout US 50 and US 395 for the majority of the day. So one of the reasons why we look at where housing and jobs are growing is to understand the road infrastructure and maintenance needs for where people live and work, and the roads in between. So Marquis showed us that the travel time from home to work is consistently increasing in our area. And so this is the kind of result that we will see as we see more and more people along the roads. If we think about the jobs and employment slides, we know that within CAMPO, jobs are concentrated within Carson City, and housing is growing south in Douglas County and east in Dayton, within Lyon County. It's important for CAMPO to continue communication with partner agencies, including NDOT, as well as consult Lyon County and Douglas County master plans to understand the increasing demand along US 50 and 395 and how to prepare for these changes along these corridors entering into Carson City throughout CAMPO. Figure 414 demonstrates comparative fatality rates as compared, CAMPO fatality rates as compared to state and national fatality rates. If we look at the blue line, that is the Nevada fatality rate, which on average is higher than the national fatality rate. And then we'll see the red line below, which is CAMPO's fatality rate, which in general lies below both the state and the national fatality rates. The Office of Traffic Safety calculates state fatalities by these emphasis areas, including impaired driving or fatalities involving pedestrians or cyclists. And you'll see that statewide, the leading cause of fatalities is drunk driving or impaired driving. As we focus on CAMPO, we see that the leading cause of fatalities are these single vehicle accidents and roadway departures. So CAMPO's monitoring where we identify these similarities and differences in regional data versus state-focused safety to determine appropriate infrastructure or educational outreach for each emphasis area that is pertinent specifically to CAMPO residents and safety needs.
Yeah, I can jump in here just to talk a little bit about the safety targets. So every year, CAMPO sets safety performance targets for both the number and rate of fatalities, as well as the number and rate of serious injuries. All of the volumes reflected in this chart represent 5-year rolling averages. In 2019, as you can see highlighted in green, we did meet our targets for fatalities and rate of fatalities, but we fell short for serious injuries. The 2020 targets have been set, but typically we don't receive crash data from NDOT until the following calendar year. We're still waiting on that data, but we expect to have it soon, and so we'll report on it in the next monitoring report. For 2021, targets will be set consistently with state targets, which was decided by this board in February of 2021. You can see in the latter columns that the rates for fatalities and injuries are set already consistent with the state goals. So once we receive our vehicle miles traveled, we can use that information in the CAMPO area to normalize and set our volume targets.
Thank you, Marquise. Figure 4.7 shows vehicle counter locations from 2016 to 2020 that are maintained by staff. Though there are anomalies of vehicles traveling up to 20 miles per hour over the recorded speed limit on Clearview and Carson River Road. We see many more green dots, just indicating vehicle counter locations where vehicles travel at the regular speed limit.
Well, can you flip that one back for a second?
Sure.
So you're indicating that everywhere there's a green dot counter, the people are observing the correct speed limit? Is that what I just heard you say? I want to make
Based-
sure. I don't want to misinterpret this.
Based on when the counter was deployed at those in those individual locations, based on the times the data was collected, the data indicated that the speeds being traveled by the vehicles was within the 5 mile an hour of the speed limit. Correct. It's not to say that's happening every day, but that's the data that's collected at those locations.
Okay. I think it would really shock people that we have anywhere that people follow the speed limit, except for, not even in school zones. So that one surprises me. Okay.
Table 4.2, PCI or pavement condition index is used to describe the general condition of pavement. So PCI is used to measure the performance of the road infrastructure to determine level of service. It's a statistical measure and requires a manual survey of the pavement. So with this table, I'd like to point out the second row down and focus on these local neighborhood roads, which if we look at the estimated PCI from 2015, it started at a 63 and has decreased through 2020 to 53 PCI. And has declined by 15% over these last 5 years. If we look at the deterioration curve, a PCI with 55 is at this steepest point within the deterioration curve, meaning that the road is declining at a faster pace than a road with a PCI of 80 or higher. As roads deteriorate along this curve, and as PCI declines, the methodology for maintaining local neighborhood roads gets more and more expensive. Table 4.3 again is pavement condition index for Carson City and Douglas County. So that first row, we're looking at a decrease between 2016 and 2020 for both Carson City and Douglas County. The second row down, we're seeing an increase in the percentage of roads where the PCI rating is 55 or below. So we're seeing an increase of roads that are falling below on this deterioration curve. And with that, we'd like to conclude and mention ongoing efforts for the 2022 Network Monitoring Report. We will continuously monitor changing socioeconomical factors and mobility needs of CAMPO residents and stakeholders. We're looking to improve bicycle pedestrian methodologies and data analysis and analyzing changes in road vehicle volumes. We're really looking forward to using the 2020 census and incorporating the 2021 Growth Management Report and having updated traffic analysis zones, TAZs, and a new travel demand model, and a new pavement condition index survey data. So the 2022 monitoring report should be lots of fun. So with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, do we have any questions?
Just a general comment. I think that this data is, there's a lot packed in here and a lot more than just about a road. When you start looking at housing and employment and all of the other data elements that are in this, and I think that it's imperative, if possible, if you would please send this to the other members of the Board of Supervisors, because I think it's data we should be utilizing for many more actions that we take. I think it's not just about a road, and so great job. The information is very important, but I think the Housing Task Force would like the data because it's our data, and I think that's more important when we're making decisions. So good job, very valuable information, and I just recommend that we really utilize it and get it out to a wider audience than people just thinking about a road. So, thank you.
Sandra?
Yeah, thank you for that. That was an excellent presentation. I agree, a lot of data packed in there. One recommendation in terms of presenting of the data, where you have the housing and employment map showing the net change would be helpful, because it looks like the growth is occurring in the areas that's already a little bit higher in. It's hard to distinguish where the actual growth is, so I think that would be a little easier to digest for me. And I want to applaud you on going to this level of detail. That nexus between land use and transportation is critical, and it's difficult as transportation agencies to get into the land use space, but it's really critical that we understand what's happening, so that we can not just respond or react, but be a part of that conversation in terms of where growth is occurring and having a coordinated plan to address the transportation needs. So thank you very much.
Chaz?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Yeah, thank you for the presentation, and there's a lot of stuff in here. I was curious on figure 2.6, household income. Is that adjusted for inflation? I mean, or is it just because obviously income, does go up over time? And I was just wondering, and if that it doesn't seem to be super critical, but I was just wondering if you knew, was it in $2010 or $2019?
That's a great question, and I can look into that for the next report.
That's fine. Then on find the right number here. So where the level of service, like 4.8, 4.9, 4.10, so there, obviously the Highway 50 corridor east and 395 south are getting worse and worse. And the options for, I guess, widening the road are very limited. So I would take this, I think a good example of using data like this proactively might be to look at alternative ways of getting people from Dayton and Mound House and Douglas County to Carson City, if that's where they're going to work. And in my mind, they're not going to ride their bicycle that far, but they might take the bus. So I think, looking forward into the future, being proactive on trying to get some sort of, transit network out there would be a good thing to do. And then lastly, 415 and 416. The categories are a little confusing to me, because in the Carson City one, the top one was single vehicle, but it didn't really say whether it was a drunk driver or an impaired driver in the single vehicle, or, it's not, to me, that wasn't all that helpful. So and I don't know if there's a bigger breakdown of that or not. Do both these sets of data come from NDOT or from data we collect as a city?
Both of these sets of data come from NDOT. And one was calculated for the state, and one was calculated specifically for the CAMPO area. The emphasis areas are a little different depending on how they were categorized. the takeaway is really the difference between, so the way that these tables work, these figures work is each of these numbers, if there was a crash in an intersection and someone was impaired, then it was counted in the impaired driving and in the intersection. And so,
Okay. Well, it's still curious to me because single vehicle doesn't show up at all in the state data table.
Because of the number of instances, yeah.
I got to think there's enough single vehicle accidents in the state that there'd be something on this chart, right? So I think if single vehicle showed up in the state data, it would make it a little more easy to see how we were doing in relation to the state overall. I do take encouragement from the fact that our impaired driving fatalities are way down compared to the state level, and I think that's good. I mean, you hate to see fatalities for any reason, but the fact that there's fewer impaired drivers, I think, is encouraging.
Commissioner McQuarrie, if I may add here, I think as we consider some of this particular data in regards to the state level and CAMPO area, I think when the Nevada Office of Public Safety starts to publish their data, and I think as we analyze that data, we can potentially have some additional conversations going forward in future reports. What we're reporting here is really sort of kind of a summary of the information we get from those various state agencies. And for whatever reason, in this particular one, I think they noted single vehicle as a different category for CAMPO or for our region than they did for the state. I think we can look and see if there's other opportunities to provide a little bit better context or a different kind of context to have more relatable type of data. So I appreciate your comment.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
I think it's just because in the Campo area, it was our number one issue, is why it's highlighted. Whoa, that we're odd to have so many single car.
This was a really, really helpful report, and you probably saw me taking tons of notes. Just a couple, just these little aha moments, and one of them, the with longer travel times, there is more impact on roads and more wear and tear, which means you need a higher budget to maintain the roads, which means more road closures, and so the fallout and the ripple effect of additional driving, really, everybody pays for that. And I think it's just such an important point to bring up. So then it made me think about planning and, infill and higher density homes and access to transportation, everything links in. And then even talking about the fatalities on the road at the last board meeting, Board of Health, we were talking about the looking at different, different projects through the lens of health. And so here's a perfect example of that, the lens of health being safety when traveling. And the reality is, the more time spent in a vehicle, the higher risk of something happening. It's just statistics. So this really brought up so many, avenues of thought. And so thank you very much. Well done.
Any other questions?
Yeah, this is me.
Oh, I'm sorry. I feel like you're in the right track in terms of the recommendations, the conclusions that you've drawn, and your emphasis areas moving forward. I think that there obviously a need for some better, more consistent counts in the pedestrian, bicycle. Yeah, I would include that in that as well, and that. Like Sandra indicated, I think if you could show the patterns of the changes in vehicle volumes on the roadways, that would be important to get a handle on, where more needs are. And you indicated that's going to be something that you take a look at. I also agree that I would think that the 2022 report is going to open some eyes with all the new data that is going to be available at that time. So look forward to seeing that. Thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
this is Wes. I've got a comment. Yeah, I just noticed that on table 4.3, there was no data on the pavement conditions in Lyon County. And I was kind of wondering why, and if we're going to have that data included in the future.
Sure, thank you, Commissioner Henderson. I think to this point, Lyon County has not participated as part of the pavement survey. Carson City typically works with CAMPO to do a pavement survey, condition survey every 3 years, and we'll be completing one here in the next month or so, and that data will be reported to CAMPO. Douglas County did one a few years ago, but CAMPO would be happy to support Lyon County in doing a pavement condition survey as sometime later next year as part of our next Unified Planning Work Program. And we'd love to partner with Lyon County. I think the struggle in the past is where that data that's collected is stored and maintained. Carson City and Douglas County both use a software called Paver that have been purchased by those agencies. That's Paver. We've spoken about that in the past, and you'll hear more about that when we get into the condition report card at the next CAMPO meeting, hopefully. But I think we can potentially come to some discussion and figure out the way to best store that data and use that going forward. But I think that's probably been one of the struggles in the past. Is it's great to collect the data, but if you don't use and analyze that data, then it becomes somewhat less important. So I think that's where the struggle's been. But CAMPO's happy to fund that and work with Lyon County on those roadways.
And I appreciate that, and I'll check on our end too and see what we can do to get on board. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Wes. Anybody else? All right, with that, we will move on to item 5F, presentation and discussion regarding CAMPO's annual federal obligation report for federal fiscal year 2021. And this is also Marquis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Marquise Williams for the record. So this is our annual obligation report. Each year, MPOs, Metropolitan Planning Organizations, including CAMPO, must publish an annual listing of projects for which federal transportation funds are obligated. In this context, obligated means the federal government's funding commitment for a specific project, so that those funds are ready to be used and drawn from. The term obligation does not necessarily signify actual expenditure of funds, or does it represent the cost of the project? For FTA projects, obligation occurs when the FTA grant is awarded, and for FHWA projects, obligation occurs when there is an executed project agreement and a notice to proceed for a specific phase, such as design and construction. So we have 4 total projects, 2 FTA projects, and 2 FHWA projects, which you can find on packet page 273 and 274. This report was posted for a 14-day public comment period in accordance with our public participation plan. We received no comments. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions from Marquise? No questions? Wes?
I'm good.
All right, thank you. And now we will move on to item 6A, Transportation Manager's Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a few items. I won't take up too long. The first thing I want to mention is in regards to CAMPO staffing. I think many of you know, but if you don't, I've been named the new transportation manager for CAMPO. So I'm looking forward to learning and growing in this position and want to work with all of our agencies, Lyon County, Douglas County, and NDOT, as well as Carson City, of course, to learn, understand, and grow CAMPO. I also want to acknowledge that we've got a grant analyst here as part of CAMPO, so that's really exciting. Rebecca Bustos is back there in the audience, so she's going to help us kind of administer and manage our grants for CAMPO, as well as support Carson City and Douglas County and Lyon County. If we should get any additional grants related to those agencies, she's here to help with coordination with NDOT, as well as reimbursement requests and things of that nature. So we're excited to have her and we want to welcome her to the team. The last thing I want to mention in regards to staff is that Kelly Norman is our new lead transportation planner analyst. We're taking on many of the responsibilities that Dirk Goring used to have for CAMPO. So wanted to welcome her to the kind of more responsibility leadership role here at CAMPO. So she'll be coordinating a lot of those planning level activities and working with NDOT, Kevin and Sandra and other folks over there related to those items. So we still have a couple of holes in the CAMPO world, particularly the Kelly's former position, but we're working on getting those filled as well. Regarding pavement management survey, since it was brought up, and I kind of mentioned this a second ago, I've been working with our consultant who did our pavement survey this past, I'm going to say fall now. The smoke kind of delayed them, but they've got the data collected. They're putting it into our paver software, and we should be reporting on that likely in January to this board as a result of the results of that survey for Carson City in this case, from that pavement management perspective. And the last thing I'll mention is sort of a melancholy is to thank Chair Stedfield for his time on the board. I believe you're not going to renew, Mr. Stedfield, so this will be your final meeting. And I do have a staff did put together a plaque, so I'd like to give this to you and take this opportunity to thank you for your leadership here as chair of CAMPO and all your time here, both on CAMPO and the RTC boards. So if we want to, I can bring this over to you now. We can do a photo, whatever your pleasure is, Mr. Chair.
You want to do it between meetings?
We can do that.
Okay. Thank you.
Totally.
Thanks a lot.
So I just wanted to mention that, and again, thank you for your work here at Carson City and CAMPO. So
Thank you. Okay.
What I have.
Did you have any other items like future agenda items that you wanted to address as part of 6B?
I do not at this time. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Then I will go to the concluding public comment. Do we have any public comment on the phone?
There are no callers on the line at this time.
Okay. Any public comment here in the room? Any comments from the board members?
Just going back to item 5, the data report, which I thought was very good, and I think it really is a springboard, and I'm thinking now particularly for the PCI and the fact that our local roads are going downhill faster. We're on the steepest part of the curve, and I know the Board of Supervisors and this commission has started the process of looking at possible ways to fund more street repair, right? And I think as part of the outreach effort for that, looking at that data is going to be super important, because that pretty much says it all. The longer we wait, the worse the problems are going to be, and the more money we need to fix it. So the sooner we can come to a conclusion or a consensus on what sort of track to take, the better off we're going to be. Thank you.
Anybody else? I just wanted to say that it's been an honor for me to serve on both CAMPO and RTC for almost 4 years.
Yeah.
Something like that. Gone through a lot of stuff in that 4 years, but it's been a privilege to work with all of you and all of you as well. So it's just time for some new blood. So anyway, with that, I will call for adjournment.
So moved.
All right. Be back at, 6?
Yep, that's perfect.
Okay, 6 o'clock for RTC. Thank y'all.
meeting of the Regional Transportation Commission to order. May I have a roll call, please?
Chair Bagwell,
Here.
Vice Chair Schutte,
Here.
Member Stedfield, Member McQuarrie, Member Dodson. A quorum's present.
Thank you so much. We're going to move on to item 3, which is public comment. Do I have anyone on the phone?
There are no callers on the line at this time.
Thank you. Do I have any public comment from the audience? Come on up. Yep. Oh, please come on up, and if you just push the button and let go, it will turn green because we've got to be able to pick you up on the recording. And if you'll start with stating your name for the record, please, and then you can go right with what you were doing.
Okay. My name is Dennis Budge. So-
Okay, go ahead. You're good.
Okay. I wrote you all a letter because I wanted to keep it, because there's so much going on. I wanted to keep it direct. We live on West 5th Street. It has become a freeway. There are cars going past our house, sometimes up to 60 miles an hour. Our residents have dogs and cats. We've got beautiful deer. Some of these people that are driving very fast are parents bringing children to the schools. Now, it's not just the Catholic school. They figured out the fastest way to get to 395 is come down King Street, drop off their middle school, or that's the junior high now, isn't it? I graduated when it was.
Me too. I know what you mean.
I know. I graduated when that was the high school. Then they come down Richmond, barrel down 5th Street. There's no stop signs until Division. There has been near misses on Thompson and 5th. And this is including bus drivers. And I have called the bus people and said, your bus drivers are supposed to be examples, not exceptions. And they get snarky with me. And they go, well, you need to give us a bus number before we can reprimand them. Well, we've tried to get the bus numbers, but they're going too fast. I mean, it's ridiculous. And it's kind of the wave of the future. I think everybody's in this big hurry. And it's sad because there's people that have lived there for a very long time. And they can't afford to move now. You've heard how the prices of housing is going up. They can't just sell, or if they do, it's going to be somebody with lots of money, and they're going to change what we've tried to maintain. And that's a beautiful downtown area. That's all.
I really want to thank you for coming tonight and expressing your concerns and listing some of your thoughts. If at all possible, if staff could get her contact information, and then they can tell you some of the options that we have to look at it. I know we're working on the safe routes to school, and I think we just made some improvements in the area. And I hope that will help some of the recent improvements, but they can look at some of these other options and have some discussions with you because it's important.
The principal at the St. Teresa's, she said that she's tried and she's notified, and they're giving her the excuse that she's a private school. Well,
It's still a school zone.
It's a school zone.
That's right. It's still a school zone.
And the signage is lacking in that area. And a lot of it is covered up because of overgrowth.
Trees.
And stuff like that. So we need to do something because somebody or some child or some child's going to see a deer get hit. And it's not if, it's when. So thank you.
Thank you so very much. And again, we've got some staff that are sitting right behind you just
Okay.
that we can get some contact
I appreciate
information.
your time.
Thank you so much
you,
for
Chris.
your comment. Thank you. Do I have any further public comment? I don't see any, so we'll move on then to approval of our minutes. Does anyone have any corrections? If not, I'll accept a motion, please. Great.
I move to approve the minutes of the September 8th, 2021 RTC meeting.
I second.
I have a motion and a second for approval of the September 8th, 2021 minutes. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Motion carried unanimously.
Madam Chair, I am abstaining since I wasn't there.
Please let the record reflect that Chaz is abstaining, not sustaining. That's pretty good, though. We need some substance tonight. There you go.
Abstinence.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, we're going to move on to agenda item 5A for possible action, discussion and possible action regarding an amendment to our cooperative agreement dealing with Colorado Street Rehab Project. Ms. Schutte, you have a disclosure, please?
Yes, I do. NRS 281A.420 requires me to disclose conflicts of interest and abstain from voting when I have a disqualifying conflict. My nephew is Chris Martinovich, who's employed by Carson City and will be presenting this item. Chris and I are not receiving compensation of any kind directly related to this item or project and are not affected by this item directly or any other or differently from any other resident in Carson City. NRS 281A.420 only requires abstention in clear cases, and I do not believe that the independence of my judgment is materially affected by my familial relationship. Therefore, I do not have a disqualifying conflict and will be voting on this matter.
Thank you, Ms. Schutte. Mr. Martinovich, you have just a brief on this one, please?
Yeah, I don't have a lot particularly on this one, just a brief summary. This is amending the agreement to increase the funds outside of the agreement for additional local funding from a variety of sources, including the Community Development Block Grant that was awarded to Carson City last summer, as well as additional redevelopment authority funding and water line utility funding for improvements related to the project. That's what I have.
Does anyone have any questions? Seeing none, I'll accept a motion, please.
I move to approve amendment number 1 as presented and to authorize the transportation manager to sign the amendment.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second for approval of the amendment as presented and authorization for the transportation manager to sign. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Motion carried unanimously. Okay, we'll move on to item 5B, which is discussion and possible action regarding the highway agreement between Carson City RTC and the Department of Transportation to fund and design and construct the new multi-use path just south of DMV between Roop Street and Carson Street, and additional rehab up to 7 miles of the existing multi-use path, moving from $1,630,000 to going to $1,630,000. Ms. Schutte, you have a disclosure, please?
And this is subsequent. So my nephew, Chris Martinovich, is the city staff presenter on this item as well. My disclosure and analysis from item 5A applies here as well. I have no disqualifying conflict and I'll be voting.
Thank you so much. Mr. Martinovich, a briefing on this one, please.
Yes, thank you. Chris Martinovich, Transportation Manager. So this item is for a new agreement between RTC and the Nevada Department of Transportation to, as the chair mentioned, to construct a new multi-use path south of the DMV between Roop Street and South Carson Street, as well as to rehabilitate a variety of multi-use paths throughout all of Carson City. We plan to do those rehabilitation and primarily slurry seal, crack sealing, and slurry seal applications. And so we'd be trying to get as much of those paths done as the funding allows. But a good portion of this project will be used for that new multi-use path connection. And essentially it'll act as a linear ditch extension, so you can come from Solomon, you can continue to Roop, and you can get to the South Carson multi-use path. It really provides that good east-west connection. And this agreement allows us to fund the design and the construction of that project. I'm happy to answer any details on the project or the agreement as needed. Thank you.
I think one of the interesting things about this, it's one of the few projects I've seen that can hit all performance districts. We rarely have something that can accomplish that. So does anyone have any other comments or questions? Mr. McQuarrie?
Yes, thanks, Madam Chair. And thanks, Chris, for enlightening me on why some paths are marked and some aren't, because for those other members who may not be aware, Parks and Open Space has a parallel project to seal a bunch of other paths that are not part of this project. So, but I did have one item that I forgot to mention to you, Chris, when we talked on the phone, and that is the path that goes from the south end of South Lomper along the freeway and then by the freeway wetland ponds to connect to the linear ditch path, or actually to Budeye Way. That was only built 3 or 4 years ago, and so I would suggest that's the bottom of the list. But I just wondered, do we have flexibility with the NDOT funding to change this around a bit in terms of path rehab? We're not locked into what's on the map, are we?
Well, thank you for the question, Commissioner McQuarrie. So to answer your first part, just to respond to the first part of that, yes, the paths shown for everyone's benefit, Exhibit 2, which is packet page 57. The green paths are the ones that we are not planning on rehabilitating, either because they're included as part of the Parks project or because we've identified them as not requiring rehabilitation in the near term. So the red paths are the paths we're identifying for rehabilitation. Regarding your second portion of your question, we plan to do as many of these paths as the funding allows. If that means we get to all of them, that would be outstanding. If we have to limit a few of them, we do plan to do a survey of all these paths and then kind of rank them in terms of priority. And this funding allows us to kick off the design component and start that survey of analysis of which paths get more priority over other paths should we run out of available funding through the TAP program. You're welcome.
Do you have any other questions? Seeing none, I'll accept a motion.
I'll do the motion. I move to approve the agreement as presented and to authorize the transportation manager to execute the agreement, as well as future amendments regarding extensions of time and changes in funding amounts not exceeding 10% of the present amount.
I second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect the motion was passed unanimously. Thank you. We're going to move on to agenda item 6, which is our non-action items, and we'll start with 6A, the Transportation Manager's Report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One of the things I want to mention as part of the Transportation Manager's Report, and I think most of you know by now, but is the award that Carson City received from the federal government as part of the RAISE grant. We received $9.3 million in federal funding to support our East William Street corridor project, which is really exciting. The RTC will absolutely be involved in that process, as well as a variety of stakeholders throughout Carson City. So we're really excited to get that project going and started. We met today with the Federal Highway Administration to start outlining the process of getting that agreement executed, as well as the project as a whole. Staff internally have been working with NDOT to develop a corridor feasibility study. And so we're in the initial phases of that feasibility study. And as we start to develop design concepts for the actual corridor, William Street corridor, we'll be bringing those through a public participation process to get additional input on certain parameters, such as like sidewalk, crosswalk locations, and some other multimodal features that we plan to implement as part of the project. So I just kind of wanted to mention that to the board and make sure that, this is exciting and we're looking forward to getting this project going. And so that RAISE grant goes a long way in pursuing that effort.
That's exciting. Super exciting. Lots of competition.
Lots of competition, yeah.
I think that's another, just want to give you a shout out to really recognize that that was a competitive grant. There was no formula dollars there or anything that gave us a leg up. We had to compete for that one. So nice job. Very nice job.
Yes, it was. It's exciting. I do want to mention, and she stepped out of the room, Kelly Norman. I'm going to try to stall a moment. As part of our Western Nevada Safe Routes to School project, we received an award from the American Planning Association at their recent convention in Reno. And if Marquise could grab her. And I just wanted to take an opportunity here, maybe at the, oh, here she comes. Hi, Kelly. I was just mentioning that we received an award for the Western Nevada Safe Routes to School Master Plan from the American Planning Association. Kelly has the award there. I just wanted to acknowledge Kelly and her work that she's done as part of that master plan, and just let the Regional Transportation Commission know that our plan, is I think the quote was one of the best plans of this type they've ever seen before, and that was from one of the judges of the American Planning Association. So I think we're doing a lot of good work, and we look forward to continuing that good work, whether it's in Carson City or with our other agencies as part of Western Nevada Safe Routes to School of Lyon County, Story County, and Douglas County in this case. So thank you, Kelly, and thanks for bringing the award, and I just wanted to mention that. So I think I'm forgetting something, but that's all I have at the moment. So I thank you, Madam Chair.
Great job, great job. Okay, we're going to move on to 6B, our street operations activity report for August, September, and October of 2021. Is there anything you really want to highlight in those?
There is nothing specifically I was going to highlight as part of item 6B. I can certainly entertain any questions, and if I can't answer them, I will pass them on to our street operations manager if they pop up.
Anybody have any questions, comments on that? Okay, then we're going to move on to 6C, which is future agenda items and our project status report, please.
Correct. So our project status report, I'll just kind of give an update. It's been a while since some of these projects have come, since we haven't had an RTC for a little while. Some of the projects at the bottom of the list are new, so I'll just kind of cruise through these. First project is our South Carson Street project. All work has been completed on that, and it's been accepted, and so we're working on the plant warranty period and working on closing out the project. This has been a very successful project. This was our last federally funded through the Tiger program, which is now the RAISE program. And so this is kind of you'll start seeing William Street here going forward pretty soon. Next project is the Freeway Multi-Use Path to Edmonds project. We've coordinated with NDOT. There is some additional coordination required with the BLM. And so those applications and that coordination is occurring so that we can get that project certified for construction this coming summer.
I do have a question on this. I highlighted one of your comments here that the BLM does not allow multi-use paths. But we've submitted an application to allow one. So can you give me a little more understanding there?
My understanding is when the right-of-way was acquired by NDOT for the freeway itself, there wasn't specifically, BLM's the underlying fee owner, they're the ones who own the land, and NDOT received an easement or a permission for the freeway to be there. The multi-use path was not necessarily included as part of that original establishment of the freeway right-of-way. And so we're having to coordinate with the BLM to get that permission to have the multi-use path. I don't think that multi-use paths specifically are prohibited. It's just that it hasn't been granted to this point as BLM has been the underlying fee owner of that parcel.
So, okay. So maybe that just the wording on this is a little bit, because maybe I'm misunderstanding, because it says are within BLM easements that do not allow. So what you're actually saying is
existing
the
easements-
permission was not in the original.
That is
Okay,
correct.
That's
Yes.
a little
BLM
bit better. The wording
No,
here got me
yes,
going. I was like,
yes.
uh-oh. Okay,
Correct.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that.
Kings Canyon is our next project. So this is our flat project that's occurring up in Kings Canyon up there. They finally finished paving, which is a huge success on the project. They've got all the driveways paved, and they're working on, weather permitting, signing and striping this week. And then there's some cleanup items up at regarding erosion control and slope protection that still have to occur. And then finally, the restroom facility up at the trailhead has been delayed because of a door issue. Who knows where the door is? But when the door arrives, then we can get the restroom here and installed. So that's sort of the hang up
on,
we're
we
looking
want a
for.
door.
We want a door.
Can't imagine that in a restroom, but okay.
Question?
Yes, I was wondering about the project cost to date on this thing. It is really low.
Yeah, so this project is, the agreement is between Hooker Creek and Central Federal Lands of the Federal Highway Administration. And so they will incur the cost of the project, and then they will invoice Carson City our match, essentially, which is a little different than what NDOT does, in which case we incur the costs and then request reimbursement for those costs. So this is backwards. That's why this particular cost is still low. We just haven't seen their invoices to this point.
And then just a little bit of discussion, and I'd like to have it on the record because there were many homeowners out in that area, different ones with different concerns, dealing with their driveways. We had lots and lots of issues with this project, but I think what's important to put on the record is that when the striping occurs in the next week or few weeks, weather dependent, you will then see the opportunity for the shouldering. I think that I've gotten a few calls that dealt with it's a really wide road, this isn't what we were expecting, et cetera, et cetera. And I've tried to explain to them that please just wait for the striping and then you will see that shoulder as promised, or that they will be able to recognize that for the horses. Because that was really quite a big discussion that we had, and we were putting in the 2 trailer spaces for horses, but that those local residents will be able to utilize that shoulder, and that 4 feet of that 6 feet is actually paved shoulder.
That's correct.
Because the unpaved portion is way too steep to be, which is on purpose to be able to handle a lot of our water issues up there. So if you could just, I just think it's important that we get this out on the record, that the horse portion will be in the 4 feet paved, and you'll see that with the striping, correct?
Yeah, the road has been constructed at 26 feet wide to intend to have 2 10-foot typical vehicular travel lanes, and then shoulders of 4 feet in the uphill direction and 2 feet in the downhill direction to accommodate a variety, and that's paved area, to accommodate a variety of multimodal users, whether they're cyclists or pedestrians or equestrian, who would use those areas along the side of the road. We did not want to stripe it as a bike lane because that could limit the opportunity there. And then you're right, there's additional graded shoulder beyond the pavement to serve as, could be additional shoulder area or just to serve as that protection between the edge of the pavement and the slopes of the ditches.
Okay, thank you so much.
Now I have a question.
Go ahead.
What's the posted speed limit on that?
Posted speed limit will be 30 miles per hour.
Because 10-foot lanes seem really narrow to me. I mean, typically 12 feet is the norm, 11 is really stretching it, but 10, especially coming down that hill, I think is, well, I mean, it's too late now, but.
Well, I know we've had a lot of discussion with Central Federal Lands, and I think at this board as well about responding to public comments and making sure we're kind of balancing the needs of not only from a highway engineer's design perspective, but also from a vehicular neighborhood kind of coordination where we're looking at, trying to narrow lanes to try to keep speeds down a little bit while providing equestrian and multimodal access up and down the canyon and not take too much right of way to have a wide road up there where people are more comfortable.
I understand all that. I'm just thinking the 30 might be a little bit too high for a posted speed limit.
We can always
With those
reevaluate and
constrictions.
reassess, and that's certainly something we have in our back pocket.
Yeah, it's just my thought.
That
I don't
potentially
know
it
what
should be
my other
25.
fellow engineers think about that, but, if we're using the lane width as essentially a traffic calming device,
Match the speed limit.
that's what I'm thinking, especially if you're going to have other modes of transportation going on the shoulders. But, I mean, that is something that, like you said, you can reevaluate and adjust as necessary.
Other portions, I will note that portions of the road just to the east of this are posted at 35 miles per hour.
Okay? Duly noted.
I certainly think that this particular road, upon the completion of this project, I think we should look at it after 6 months and let's see what really happened. I think you're right. Let's watch it and put it on the
Well, and I think-
horizon as one of those that we're going to come back and check and say, did what we planned for and what we engineered, is that what we actually see? So I think that's something there's an individual that's, very concerned about this area, and that's really what my discussion is, okay, let's find out what we got right and then make any adjustments as needed 6 months after. Let's try to go through a season and see what happens with the waterfalls up there. Let's find out what's worked and not worked. I think every project that we do, we should come back and circle. Did
That
we get
is-
the intended consequence that we were expecting? So
Would the speed issue, would it make more sense to start at 30 or at 25? And just so to normalize the expectation of going slower versus starting at 30, and then in the event people aren't being respectful of that, going backwards can get complicated? Or slowing down can get complicated?
I think what I'd like to do is take a look at our speed limit policy and see what our process is for reviewing and reevaluating speed limits. I think that has some guidance in there in regards to when projects are implemented, the process about when we go about reevaluating and evaluating different speed limits. I'd like at the moment to stick it at 30 miles an hour, which is the planned speed limit, and then we take a look at our policy and we see when the appropriate time is to review and reevaluate, and we can take appropriate measures at that time.
yeah, I have to admit, when during CAMPO, when we saw the green where you were indicating the counters means that people are adhering within the 5 miles of the speed limit, I actually have to say I was surprised, right? But it's a good answer. It's a super good answer that means people are doing what they're supposed to do, and I think it fits, right? Yeah. Maybe that's it. But it really goes to the comment from the public that we just heard earlier. And when I was looking at something, I thought, ooh, I hate to tell her that it says that they're following the speed limit there. But I don't think anecdotal that the residents in areas believe that's accurate. So,
Yeah.
thank you. I think we'll watch that one and see what happens. Okay, you could move on. Thank you.
Okay. Our next project is the Roop Street Rehabilitation Project. This project is being designed by Far West Engineering, a consultant. We're nearly 90% at this point, and so we're looking to get the design completed here within the next couple of months and construction beginning in spring of 2022. The Northridge District 2 Northridge Pavement Preservation Project. This was a federally funded project using Surface Transportation Block Grant funds. All work is complete, all invoices have been paid, retention has been released, and the project is essentially moving in the closeout phases, and we'll be working on closing out the agreement with NDOT. And so this was the last time we'll see this project as part of this report.
And that one came in under is what you're, wow.
Came in under budget. The bids we received at the time were quite a bit under our budgeted amount, so.
Yeah.
The District 2 Long Street project, this project is well under construction. If you've driven out there, you can see them working. They're doing primarily water and sewer work. They've finished the majority of the water line work, and now they're beginning work on the sewer lines. They've also completed the storm drain work in Rand Avenue. The majority of the paving on this project will be occurring in the spring as we get warmer temperatures again at that time.
This was a long project.
Long project.
Long project. Okay, thank you.
Our next project is the Robinson Area Sewer Project. This project is just getting under construction, and so they've been starting to work in Spear Street and areas around Robinson and Division as well. And so you'll start to see more work occurring out there. This one, like Long Street, the paving will occur in the spring. The Colorado Street CDBG project, this is the one we had the agreement on as a previous agenda item. We're getting ready, or we have submitted the 90% plans to NDOT. They're due comments back to us any day now. And so once we receive their comments, we can finalize the plans and put the project out to bid. And so we're excited to get this one under construction probably next spring and summer as well. So this will be a good project.
Good.
District 3 Deer Run Road Pavement Preservation Project. All work was completed out there. The road received its slurry treatment as well as restriping and some sign adjustments. So everything's clear on that one, and this project will be closed out. Similarly, the Clear Creek Road Pavement Preservation Project. They actually misstriped portions of Curry Street, and so we're going to have them redo some of those areas. and correct the striping in accordance with our plans and specifications. And so this one's going to linger a little bit longer, unfortunately, but the majority of the work is done. We just want to get those striping corrections done correctly. District 3 Center Drive reconstruction project. Again, this is another project we're receiving assistance with from a consultant, NCE. 90% has been completed, and so we're working on the 100% design on this project, and we'll look at completing this and getting out to bid later, probably January or February at the latest is my hunch on this particular project. School zone sign project. Fortunately, we've been able to get many of the beacons installed. There is one last beacon that's under construction right now at the corner of Mountain Street and Winnie Lane. That is the final beacon to be installed and made operational. All the other ones across the other school zones, being Eagle Valley, Carson Middle, Borderwick Bray, and Fritch, have all been installed and operational. The one there at Fritch at the corner of Mountain and Winnie should be up probably mid next week, and we'll get it operational soon thereafter.
Are you receiving comments from the public in those areas? I want to let you know that I am, about how positive and how happy they are with the updates.
I am receiving comments, yes.
Are the rest of you?
I'm not
Are you
saying,
getting comments too, Lisa? No? I've probably got about, I want to say about 20, all positive. They've noticed it. Anyway, I just want to say that I think it's a good move.
good, thank you. East District 3 East 5th Street reconstruction project. We've primarily focused lately on the right turn lane to southbound Carson River Road. So the design of that is advancing. We're also looking at design concepts for increasing the capacity at the roundabout at Fairview and 5th Street. And so we're going to move forward with the right turn lane first this spring, and then the roundabout design will progress over the summer, and we'll get that out probably next spring, a year from now in 2023 for construction in the summer of 2023. So that's the schedule on that project, but should get the right turn lane to help some of the traffic flow there at Eagle Valley Middle School in that area.
I will tell you, obviously I live there, so they're not using the new, they're still going straight and dropping kids off, but admittedly, there isn't any sign or anything to tell them to make the right-hand turn to utilize the new path. So just as a comment.
Yeah, thank you. I think we also have a little bit, I think we're taking a look at some striping as well along Carson River Road to make the entrance a little more clear as well. So we're going to look at that as part of the project. The District 4 Curry Street pavement preservation project. So this one, along with the next two, are sort of, these three projects together are new projects as part of our District 4 pavement preservation program. We're under design on all three of these projects. They're at a variety of stages in terms of design. Some of them involve additional curb ramps. Some of them involve some additional landscaping and other parameters. And so we're working on those. They're relatively straightforward projects. This Curry Street, Solomon, and Silver Sage. So we're working on each of those for construction spring and summer of 2022.
Chris, I did have a question about the Curry Street one. We're not doing the bit around the hill, or at least we're not showing that, but shouldn't that be included?
Yeah, so thanks for the question, Commissioner McQuarrie. I think the portion between that we're not showing in that map there on packet page 78 is because there's significant challenges that we have to kind of coordinate and deal with. There's a lot of roadside slope issues, there's utility issues, there's a larger pavement reconstruction need in that area. I think there's also right-of-way issues in terms of state lands, the Railroad Museum, the U.S. Forest Service. There's some sort of complications regarding right-of-way in there that I think we should keep that project on the list and keep that in something we need to look at. But I think as part of a pavement preservation program, that area needs more than just pavement preservation. And so that's the reason why we haven't included that as part of this particular project.
Any other questions? Good. Thank you so much for this. I use this project status report a lot and do a lot of meetings and discussion with the public of what we are doing with the road money that we have. I think it's just an excellent report that's able to show people that here's how we are stretching dollars to doing the best that we can using federal dollars, city dollars, which are small, but I think it really shows the picture. I was at a meeting of the retired public employees of Nevada, so I went and did that one, and I got the question asked, what are you going to do for, and I really enjoy that I'm working hard to change the word from local to neighborhood, because I think that drives the point home to everyone to understand the difference between the roads. And they really wanted to know what are you going to do for neighborhood roads? And I said, well, what are you going to do for them? What are you willing to approve? Because that's the real issue, right? What are you willing to ask the board to do and to tax? Because that's what it's going to take. It is not going to happen without growing the money. And that, whether anyone wants to recognize it or not, it means you have to have more input into the system. So I really do use these reports to have the conversation with the public. And when I'm able to show them, this is what I am doing with your money, but if you want me to get to this little street in a neighborhood, you're going to have to give me some other choices, whether that's a gas tax or a neighborhood improvement district or all these other options that we've talked about. So it was really a good conversation. And again, I know it's a little bit of work to update these and to work on them, but I think they help tell right? They're what we can use to tell the story. And it's hard data is the best way to tell the story. So thank you for that. Good work.
Thank you.
Okay, no more questions? Okay, again, just under general public comment, Greg, can't thank you enough for working with us and serving on this committee. I have really honored, just been an honor to hear your perspective and to work with you, and it's been very valuable. So it's important that we put that out there. So we're going to move on to final public comment. Is there any on the phone?
There are no callers on the line at this time.
Is there any in the audience? Great job for the award. Thanks for all your help, Kelly. Okay, with that, if there's no objection, we will adjourn. So we're adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for a good job. And if I don't have a chance to